What if the best deer mineral on earth costs $10 at your farm co-op and nobody told you? A guy named Hank, 58 years old, retired dairy farmer in Callaway County, Missouri, said that exact sentence to me in the parking lot of a Tractor Supply in Fulton in the spring of 2020. I'd just walked out with $47 worth of commercial deer mineral in a bag with a buck on the label. Hank was loading 50-pound sacks of something called dicalcium phosphate into the bed of his truck. 3 bags, total cost $30. He looked at my bag, looked at his bags, and said the words that changed how I think about every mineral product I've ever purchased. He said, "Read the ingredient list on that bag you're holding. The first 2 ingredients are dicalcium phosphate and salt. You just paid $47 for $6 worth of powder with a deer on the label." I stood there in the parking lot and read the label. He was right. Dicalcium phosphate was the #1 ingredient. Sodium chloride was number 2. Everything else was trace minerals, artificial flavoring, and filler. The compound that actually does the work, the one that provides the calcium and phosphorus a buck's body demands during antler growth, costs about $10 for a 50-pound bag at any farm supply store in America. A 50-pound bag makes enough mineral mix for 7 to 10 sites. That's roughly $1.50 per site, less than a cup of gas station coffee. And the compound inside that $10 bag is chemically identical to the primary ingredient in every branded deer mineral, selling for $15 to $25 per application at Bass Pro, Cabela's, and every pro shop in between. And I'd been buying camo-labeled bags of the same compound for 5 years at $15 to $25 per single-site application. I'm going to break down exactly what dicalcium phosphate is, why a whitetail buck's body is biologically programmed to seek it out, the specific recipe a Missouri Department of Conservation agent gave to hunters in his district, the trail camera data that shows what happens when you switch from commercial mineral to this mix, and the one thing you must get right or the deer won't touch it. And stick around to the end because there's a soil preparation trick that turns a first-year mineral site into a permanent feeding station the deer dig into for years without you ever refreshing it. Before anything else, check your state regulations. Dicalcium phosphate mixed into the ground is classified as a mineral supplement. And in many states, pure mineral is legal year-round. But in states dealing with CWD, the rules are different and changing fast. Michigan banned all baiting and feeding, including mineral blocks and salt, in the entire Lower Peninsula after detecting chronic wasting disease and bovine tuberculosis. Minnesota prohibits all deer attractants, including salt and minerals, in CWD management zones. Colorado bans all minerals statewide. Illinois prohibits mineral sites entirely. Virginia has banned deer feeding, including mineral licks, year-round in over 40 counties. The list keeps growing as CWD spreads. At last count, at least 17 states have full or partial bans on mineral placement during some or all of the year. A 5-minute check on your state wildlife agency's website tells you exactly where you stand. A mineral site is not worth a fine. And concentrating deer at a shared lick in a CWD zone is not worth the risk to the herd. The whole point of supplementing minerals is to help the herd. Putting them at risk defeats the purpose. The biology of why dicalcium phosphate works isn't complicated once you understand what an antler actually is. A hardened whitetail antler is roughly 40 to 50% organic matter, mostly protein from collagen fibers, and 50 to 60% mineral. The 2 most abundant minerals in that structure are calcium and phosphorus, which together make up about 60% of the total mineral content. According to data published by the University of Missouri Extension, a whitetail antler contains approximately 22% calcium and 11% phosphorus. That's a 2-to-1 ratio of calcium to phosphorus. And that ratio matters because it mirrors the biological demand ratio the deer's body uses most efficiently to build bone. If you give a deer pure calcium without phosphorus, the calcium can't be deposited properly. If you give phosphorus without calcium, the phosphorus passes through. The 2-to-1 ratio is what allows both minerals to be absorbed and deposited into the antler's hydroxyapatite crystal structure, which is the mineralized scaffold that gives antlers their hardness and density. Dicalcium phosphate, which is a white to off-white powder sold at farm supply stores as a cattle feed supplement, contains 19 to 23% calcium and 18 to 21% phosphorus. It delivers both minerals in roughly the same 2-to-1 ratio that an antler requires. No other single compound available at a farm store provides both macro minerals in the biologically correct ratio for antler growth. That's why it's the #1 ingredient in nearly every commercial deer mineral on the market. It's also why you don't need the commercial bag. A Michigan Sportsman Forum poster who formulates animal minerals professionally put it plainly. Dical is the most important ingredient in any deer mineral mix. The salt is just the attractant that gets the deer to consume it. The dical is what actually builds bone. Without it, you're selling salt with a deer on the label. The daily mineral demand on a growing buck during velvet season is staggering. A mature buck grows an average of 1/4 inch of antler per day during peak growth in June and July. That's roughly a 1/2 centimeter every 24 hours. The calcium and phosphorus to build that growth has to come from somewhere, and the deer's body pulls it from 2 sources: the diet, meaning whatever the buck eats and drinks, and the skeleton itself. When dietary calcium and phosphorus aren't sufficient, the buck's body mines calcium from its own ribcage and skull to redirect it to the antlers. This process is called physiological osteoporosis, and it's well documented in deer biology research. By the time a buck sheds velvet in September, his skeleton has been partially depleted. He spends the fall and winter rebuilding that skeletal reserve. A lactating doe faces a similar drain. Her milk contains high percentages of calcium and phosphorus to pass to fawns, and she'll pull those minerals from her own bones if her diet doesn't provide them. A mineral site that provides dicalcium phosphate from February through August. The 7 months covering late gestation, fawning, lactation, and the entire antler growth cycle gives both bucks and does a direct dietary source of the exact minerals their bodies are burning through fastest. That's not an attractant. That's supplemental nutrition the herd actively seeks because their physiology is telling them they need it. The mineral chemistry behind antler development, the specific role calcium and phosphorus play in the collagen matrix, the way a buck's body mobilizes skeletal reserves during velvet growth, and the exact ratios that commercial companies charge 10 times the raw cost to provide, is what I organized into the Buck Hunter's Bible, along with 76 other field-tested techniques. 90 pages covering mineral science, ag scent control, attractant chemistry, stand placement, and a chapter of old-timer methods. Reference card in the back for the stand. Links in the description below, QR code on screen. The recipe I use is the one a Missouri Department of Conservation agent reportedly distributed to hunters in his district, and it's been posted on the Missouri Sportsman's website for years. I've seen the same formula referenced on Archery Talk, Michigan Sportsman, Iowa Whitetail, Bow Sight, and Deer Builder forums. It works the same everywhere. 1 part dicalcium phosphate, 2 parts trace mineral salt, 1 part stock salt. That's it. 3 ingredients. If you buy 50-pound bags of each, you'll have 200 pounds of mineral mix for roughly $25 to $30 total, depending on your local farm store prices. That's enough to start or refresh 7 to 10 mineral sites at about 20 pounds per site, roughly the weight of a bowling ball and a half. 7 sites across a 100 to 200 acre property means you've got a mineral station within easy walking distance of every deer on the ground. A comparable amount of commercial deer mineral from the pro shop would cost $150 to $250 for the same number of sites. The math alone should make you angry. It made me angry. I calculated what I'd spent over the previous 5 years buying commercial mineral for 3 sites, refreshing twice per year, roughly $900. The active ingredient in every bag I bought was the same dicalcium phosphate I could have been buying for $10 a bag the entire time. I told Hank this in a follow-up conversation the following spring, when I ran into him again at the same tractor supply. He laughed and said, "Welcome to farming. We've known this for 40 years. He said dairy farmers have been putting dical in cattle feed since the 1960s because calcium and phosphorus drive milk production the same way they drive antler growth. The animal science has been settled for half a century. The deer hunting world just never looked at the livestock aisle. The reason the recipe includes 2 parts trace mineral salt and 1 part stock salt is not because deer need that much sodium. It's because dicalcium phosphate by itself tastes bitter. Multiple forum posters confirm this. A Michigan sportsman poster, who used to formulate his own commercial mineral brand, said the mixes he put too much dical in, the deer would not touch. The salt masks the bitterness and acts as the initial attractant that draws the deer to the site. Once they're consuming the mix, the dical delivers the calcium and phosphorus. The trace mineral salt also provides small amounts of zinc, manganese, iron, selenium, and copper, all of which are found in hardened deer antler and contribute to immune function and overall herd health. An Archery Talk poster shared his trail camera data after switching from commercial mineral to this exact recipe. Before the switch, he had a camera on a commercial mineral site for 1 week and pulled 16 photos. He bought the 3 ingredients from Fleet Farm for $21, mixed 5 gallons, and put it in front of the same camera in the same location. 1 week later, he pulled 118 photos. Same camera position, same property, same time of year. The deer tore the ground apart. His exact words were, "They are tearing this stuff up." He posted a photo of a young buck standing in a crater where the mineral site used to be, and the site had only been active for a week. Now, I want to hedge that. One guy's camera data on one property isn't proof. Trail camera numbers are affected by deer density, competing food sources, camera placement, time of year, and a dozen other variables. But that 16 to 118 jump on the same camera at the same location with the same deer population, the only variable being the mineral formula, is consistent with what I've seen on my own sites and what dozens of other forum posters have reported. The commercial mineral worked. The homemade mix worked dramatically better. All probably because the dical concentration was higher and the salt-to-mineral ratio was dialed in for deer instead of for shelf appeal. Application is where most guys mess this up, and it's the reason some hunters tried dicalcium phosphate once and give up. You cannot just dump a pile of white powder on the ground and expect results. The deer don't eat the powder, they eat the dirt. Once the minerals leach into the soil, the deer consume the mineralized earth by licking and chewing the ground itself. That's how natural mineral licks work. Deer travel miles to visit clay banks and seeps where groundwater has deposited calcium, phosphorus, and sodium into the soil. Your mineral site replicates that process, but you're controlling what minerals go in and where. Dig a shallow depression about 36 inches across, roughly the diameter of a tractor tire, and about 6 inches deep. Pour approximately 20 pounds of the mixed mineral into the hole and mix it thoroughly with the loose soil using a shovel. You want the mineral incorporated into the dirt, not sitting on top. Then pour a few gallons of water over the site to help dissolve the salt, and begin driving the minerals into the surrounding soil. If your soil is clay-based, the minerals will bind tightly and persist for months. If your soil is sandy, the minerals will leach out faster, and you'll need to refresh more often, roughly every 3 to 4 months instead of every 6. A Pensacola. Fishing forum poster, who runs mineral sites in the sandy coastal soils of the Florida Panhandle, confirmed this. He said deer consume the mineralized soil by sticking their hooves in the wet site and licking their hooves repeatedly. That's how he knows they're using it even when the site looks untouched on the surface. A grand view. Outdoors article on creating mineral licks confirms the same method and recommends about 1 site per 100 acres of property to ensure the majority of the deer have easy access. The timing matters. February or March is the ideal window to establish a new site. I covered mineral site timing in another video, but the logic is simple. A site started in February gets 6 full months of deer habituation before hunting season. By August, every buck on the property has visited that site in velvet, giving you a complete census on camera. By October, the deer associate that location with safety and routine. A doe group that feels comfortable at a mineral site in July will use that travel corridor in daylight come November. And where the does go during the rut, the bucks follow. A site started in September gives you 6 weeks. One started in February gives you 8 months. The math isn't close. The one thing Hank told me that nobody else had mentioned, and this is the trick I promised at the beginning, is what happens to a mineral site in year 2 and beyond if you prepare the soil correctly the first time. Most hunters treat a mineral site like a seasonal product. They dump mineral in the spring, the deer hit it through summer, and by fall the site is depleted. Next spring, they start over. Hank doesn't do it that way. He digs his initial hole about 8 inches deep instead of 6. Mixes the mineral with a full bucket of wet clay soil from a creek bank and packs it into the depression. The clay acts as a binder that holds the dickel and salt in the soil matrix for months longer than sandy or loamy topsoil would. He refreshes once in July with a half dose on top and then doesn't touch the site again until February. By the second year, the deer have dug the hole down 18 to 24 inches, about knee depth, and they're consuming the mineralized soil from the sides and bottom of the pit. The site becomes self-sustaining in the sense that the deer are pulling mineral from soil that was treated a year ago, and you're only adding a small refresh on top each spring. A bow site poster confirmed the same pattern, and saying his mineral stations have been in the same locations for years, and he only adds a refresh of 100 pounds of dickel mixed with Ragland Allstock mineral once per year in March. The deer swarm to it during spring and summer, and by fall the 3-foot-deep holes, his words, are a permanent feature of his property. He described adding a $16 trophy rock in mid-July to keep bucks standing in front of the camera longer for better antler photos, which tells you the dickel mix is doing the nutritional work, and the trophy rock is just there for extended camera time. That's a guy who understands the difference between nutrition and attraction. A deer builder forum poster who identified himself as a professional deer nutritionist and mineral formulator. A guy who actually designs commercial deer mineral products for other companies. Confirmed that dicalcium phosphate and monocalcium phosphate are available at any farm store or feed mill, and that the commercial deer mineral market is built on repackaging these farm-grade ingredients with flavoring and a markup. He said the key to consumption is particle size and salt balance. Finer powders dissolve better in soil and produce less dust, which deer avoid. Coarser products sit on the surface. He recommended purified dickel that has iron and aluminum removed because those contaminants can bind up other trace minerals in the soil and reduce availability. One condition where this doesn't work well is on properties already saturated with mineral access. If your neighbors run cattle and have salt and mineral blocks in every pasture within a quarter mile, the deer on your property already have access to sodium and trace minerals. They won't be as drawn to your site because they're not deficient. A deer hunter forum poster reported exactly this. He tried every type of mineral lick he could find, and the deer wouldn't touch any of them. He eventually realized that, with cattle pasture all around him, mineral and salt licks were in every direction. There was nothing to supplement, because the deer were already getting everything they needed from the livestock operations. In that scenario, your time is better spent on food plots, habitat management, or water sources rather than minerals. The other limitation is that mineral consumption drops sharply from September through February. A bow site poster observed that his sites get heavy traffic from Memorial Day through Labor Day, and then the photos taper off. The biological reason is simple. Antler growth is complete by September. Lactation demand drops as fawns are weaned, and the deer shift their nutritional focus from mineral to caloric intake for winter fat reserves. Mineral sites are a spring and summer tool, not a hunting season tactic. If you're putting mineral out in October, expecting it to pull deer during the rut, you'll be disappointed. The deer aren't looking for calcium in November. They're looking for dose and calories. Save your money and your effort for when it matters. Everything in this video, plus about 60 more field-tested techniques, are in the Buck Hunter's Bible. Mineral science, attractant chemistry, scent control, stand placement, and rut phase tactics. Reference card in the back. It's in the description below. QR code on screen. The thing I can't stop thinking about is the economics. A 50-pound bag of decalcium phosphate costs $10 at the co-op. A 50-pound bag of trace mineral salt costs $5. A 50-pound bag of stock salt costs $4. Total for 150 pounds of mineral mix, $19. That's 7 sites at roughly $2.70 each. The commercial equivalent, assuming a 10-pound bag of branded deer mineral at $15, would cost $105 for the same 7 sites. Over 5 years with 2 refreshes per year, the homemade mix costs roughly $190 for a 3-site program. The commercial version costs roughly $900. That's $710 in savings over 5 years, and the homemade mix has a higher concentration of the active ingredient because it's not diluted with flavoring, coloring agents. Oh, and cheap filler salt. My wife found 3 50-pound bags of white powder in the garage and asked if I was starting a cement business. I told her it was deer mineral. She asked how much it cost. I said $19 for all 3 bags. She said that was the first sensible hunting purchase I'd made in 20 years. She's probably right. The deer don't care about the label. They don't care about the camo packaging. They care about whether the soil under their hooves contains the calcium and phosphorus their bones are screaming for during the 7 months their body is building, antler, nursing fawns, or recovering skeletal reserves. Dicalcium phosphate, 1 part to 2 parts, trace mineral salt to 1 part stock salt. Mixed into a 36-inch hole, refreshed twice a year. $2 per site. And every commercial deer mineral company in America is built on repackaging that recipe at a 10-to-1 markup with a picture of a buck on the front. Hank knew. The dairy farmers have always known. The co-op sells it by the pallet. The only people who didn't know were the deer hunters walking past it to the hunting aisle to pay 10 times more for the exact same compound. Now you know too. Hank passed the knowledge to me in a parking lot for free. I'm passing it to you right now for the same price. And the next time you're standing in the hunting section, holding a $25 bag of mineral with a deer on the label, flip it over and read the ingredient list. First ingredient, dicalcium phosphate. Walk to the livestock aisle. Buy the same thing for $10. Mix it with trace mineral salt and stock salt. Your deer won't know the difference. Your wallet will. 1 part dical, 2 parts trace mineral salt, 1 part stock salt, $2 per site, mixed into the dirt. And the deer will dig a hole so deep your grandkids will think it's a well. That's not a product, that's a program. And it costs less per year than a single bottle of commercial deer scent.